Welcome to the GameSpot Theatre. You are attending Faking It. Now, this is the idea, and it is a slightly weird idea. The panelists have nominated each a poorly reviewed game, and they will be taking it in turns to defend that game to the best of their abilities. All of them will defend each game, and then at the end, I'm going to ask you to vote on who actually likes the game and which three were faking it. Now, if we get time, instead of a more traditional Q&A, what we're going to try out is getting you to nominate the game that you feel guilty for enjoying, and we will defend it for you right here and right now so that you never be ashamed of enjoying that game ever again. Now, my name is Nick Healy. These days, I'm a radio host in Sydney. Before that, I spent about 20 years doing tech and gaming journalism. Sorry. I'm going to introduce the panelists. Now, I should know better, but I asked them to write their own bios. So I am not actually responsible for what you're about to hear, and I do apologise. Joe Gilroy is the best games reviewer on the planet. He has never failed a self-evaluation examination. Nathan Lawrence. If Nathan spent more time caring about what other people thought of his opinions, he'd probably rethink some of his views. Thankfully, he doesn't have to worry about that because he's always right. Lucy O'Brien, the female. And Edmund Tran, the Asian one. Get on with it, shall we? Now, to kick off, and I'm doing this in no particular order because I want to keep them on their toes, we're going to delve back to 2003 for a little game called Resident Evil Dead Aim. Now, this is a light gun game, which means that that pun title is not nearly as clever as Capcom thought it was. Who would like to kick off telling me why Resident Evil Dead Aim is a good game?
I'll kick off. First of all, it's a great pun, and you're a hater. And it wasn't called that. It was called Biohazard Gun Survivor 4 Heroes Never Die. And it was such an influential game that it actually inspired the quote in Overwatch. All right. Stop laughing. No, it was a brilliant game. It took place on a fucking cruise ship. And up until then, Resident Evil had been this insane insane fucking plots about everybody keeps stealing this zombie virus for reasons nobody can understand. This one takes it to a cruise ship. They steal an entire fucking cruise ship that is also owned by Umbrella, because Umbrella's got
an umbrella hole and everything.
That's good.
Yeah.
They steal this cruise ship. It gets crazier from there, right? But it's basically under siege. And like Nick said, it's a light gun game. So you move around. You actually move around in third person most of the time, but you do your aiming, right, with the light gun. It had you could do headshots and stuff like that. There was another light gun game that came out before. I think this is what I love the most about that aim, is that there was, I think it was Code Veronica or whatever it was.
It was Code Veronica.
And you could do, you couldn't do headshots in that one. And suddenly they, remember that headshots kill zombies? But they added it back into Dead Aim, and that made, suddenly you had this fucking awesome zombie shooting light gun game that's, for me, I must have played it 8 times through, over and over and over again. I got it down to, I could finish in, an hour, I think, by the end. I was just blam, blam, I'm John Wick on this motherfucking boat.
The light gun aspect is really good, because like you said, in previous Resident Evil games, you couldn't headshot, and that's the most important part about a zombie sort of experience, is being able to frantically shoot a zombie, but if you're calm and collected, you're rewarded with easy kills. And I think moving around, I used to play it the light gun in one hand and a PS2 controller in the other hand, so you'd actually move around with one and then just shoot one-handed, like a badass. It felt really good to actually mow down these zombies. And the cruise ship setting, all the best Resident Evils take place in a single location. There are some that sprawl different locations, but the one single horrific location where you're trapped at sea really adds a nice sort of atmosphere to that game, which I really enjoy.
But Ed, was it a good light gun game? Because your own publication, GameSpot, noted that it was actually a particularly poor example of the light gun genre.
Well, you know, I wasn't around at that time.
You're still responsible for it.
If I had been, the QA would have been very different. But no, I very much enjoy that. Like most light gun games, there aren't very many light gun games. The ones that do exist are ones like Time Crisis, which eventually moved on to like submachine guns instead of pistols. And sort of it had you frantically like sort of doing the two-handed like trigger pull to shoot as many things as possible. But this one was a more intellectual light gun game. Because you could change your position with the movement, take your own choices of cover, and be more precise, and you're rewarded for that.
Well, I'm just going to chime in here. So this game you mentioned that this game came out in 2003. Now, this is when I was still studying at university. So I was a poor student. I couldn't really afford many games. So I would go down to my local United Video in Brooklyn, Wellington, New Zealand, and rent Resident Evil Dead Aim over and over and over again. I was just so ridiculously addicted to this game. I've been, like, I'll be honest, I've been a Resident Evil fan my whole life. And I think what Dead Aim did so well is kind of bring that incredible atmosphere, the totally convoluted plot, but let's be real, that's kind of why we're there for Resident Evil.
That's,
you know?
that's what I love about the series.
That's what we love about the series, and then also add this like kind of novelty thing that really appealed to me and my friends. So we would just drink a few beers, they'd come round, and we'd play Resident Evil Dead Aim. And I mean, look, I know that's more of a personal anecdote. You know, if I was reviewing this, and I wasn't reviewing video games back in 2003 either, but, you know, there were certain things that were so ahead of its time. I mean, the textures, ridiculous. Like, you know, you sort of look at it now, you think, my God, this is 2003. How did they have those textures? It's got absolutely, you know, gorgeous lighting, and again, you know, just the ridiculous over-the-top sort of characterization, and I was so pulled into it, and it was, for a light game, also it was quite long, so there was like a longevity there. It wasn't like something that's why we kept renting it, because it wasn't just something you could get over, you know, in an hour or so.
Oh my
like
God.
Old Joe Gilroy here, who apparently loves the game.
Oh my Lord.
No, you could, you know, there were legs on that thing.
Yeah, totally.
So for us, it was a real kind of almost like a movement for us during my university. I would say it was almost seminal.
I think there's a couple of key points that you're all missing here. Resident Evil has a history for all these quality things that you have said, but one of the things that sucks about Resident Evil is the inability to move and shoot at the same time. Not in this game.
That's right.
Yep, move and shoot. The more important point, as a guy who grew up playing PC games and kind of frowned down on consoles, was that you could plug in a mouse. So this is the first time that I've wanted to play a shooter experience on a console back in 2003 when I was a lot younger. And it was a lot of fun.
Sorry, Nathan, how did you plug a mouse into your PlayStation?
I got a dongle. I
Oh,
believe.
you just had an adapter.
Yeah. That was definitely a dongle. I bought it.
I think what you're mentioning about the story before is also very important, because this is one of the only light gun games that has a decent story.
Yeah, no, I mean, and it was so irreverent.
Yeah, it's so irreverent. Yeah. Yes, and it also had great characters. The protagonist Bruce looks exactly like Paul Walker, which is definitely what you want in a video game. And his partner Fong Li is a Chinese intelligence agent and one of the only sort of Asian characters in the Resident Evil series. So big mad up to the Asians.
Oh.
Yeah.
Here comes
She was
the fire.
also a woman.
Yeah. Also, yes.
I just want to point out that my book is closed, but these guys keep looking at notes. That's interesting,
Yeah,
isn't it?
interesting.
That's pretty interesting. No, one of the things that none of them would have pointed out, because none of them played it, is that you moved in this, like, it wasn't actual Resident Evil movement per se. It wasn't the tank turning. It was tank turning. It wasn't the sort of pushing forward all the time. just pressed up. And so suddenly it wasn't like camera relative in that sense. And so, I don't know if this happened to everyone, but in the earlier Resident Evil games, I found myself constantly like, I'd go into one room and then, because I'm still holding the button, I'd go straight back out again, and that drove me nuts. But it didn't happen in Dead Aim, because it was fucking brilliant and the best Resident Evil game to date, like to that point in time at least anyway.
Okay, so just a reminder, one of these people actually means what they just said. And we'll be voting on that later on. Hands up quickly, who has played Dead Aim?
Yeah.
Popular game, popular game. We're going to stick with 2003 on a little game that came out for GameCube, Windows, PlayStation 2, and the original Xbox. I'm talking about Enter the Matrix. Take it away.
Movie tie-ins are the greatest, like, source material for game adaptations, hands down. The end. But like, this wasn't just an adaptation. The cool thing about it was, as a massive Matrix nerd in the lead up to The Matrix Reloaded, they had the Animatrix, and you know, about 90% of that was awesome, and there was some weird robot conversion love stuff that I didn't get it. But Enter the Matrix was like the prologue to Matrix Reloaded, which is awesome, which was unheard of at that time, and we didn't have that again until Chronicles of Riddick, Escape from Butcher Bay. So this idea that you could keep building a bigger, better world in a video game that wouldn't leave the movie people behind, but would also let gamers have like this extra experience. And I remember there's little lines in the movie between Niobe and the other guy who Ghost. Thank you. I love him so much that I just temporarily forgot his name. That like actually like throwaway lines that reference entire stages in Enter the Matrix. And as a fan of like, you know, bullet time, which kind of started in The Matrix and then was stolen by Max Payne and then was like, you know, they took it back, as you do, you know, like Indiana Jones, Lara Croft, Nathan Drake, and then it recycles, that kind of idea.
Yeah, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was great.
Amazing.
I mean, you know, for me, this was 2003, so I was a poor student, and I really afford video games, so my friends and I would go down to the United Video and rent Enter the Matrix. And look, you know, I was a huge Matrix fan, as we all were. I mean, it was really during the early 2000s.
It was a seminal series.
It was absolutely it's seminal, and it was
Irreverent.
Great textures. Great textures.
But what I loved about this one especially, I mean, not only, you know, the Wachowskis actually, you know, write an hour's worth of plot, which meant that it was an immediate must-play for any Matrix fan, which was all of us at the time. Like, I look back on some of those movies and I'm like, oh, okay, maybe they weren't as great as the first one, but I remain a diehard fan. And Enter the Matrix was just a perfect sort of intermediary game. And because it was written by the Wachowskis, there was so much more sort of narrative depth there than in basically any other movie tie-in. And not only was I sort of just enraptured because I was a fan, but it really made playing as Neo, you know, absolutely incredibly realistic. I mean, like, you know, he was the bullet time stuff.
Oh my god.
You know,
you don't play as Neo, you play as Niobe.
Damn it!
Oh my lord. Actually, like, apart from the parts that she was definitely making up, like growing up in Willington, she like, Lucy makes some great points. It was this game that I think captured the essence of the Matrix, and it brought it like into the Matrix as like people who were so fucking captured by the series at that point in time. And yeah, like more than the bullet time stuff, which it did fine, but like it was the acrobatics that it added into it. There was this like run through the early 2000s where every single game was attempting to do that sort of acrobatic motion, and none of them really nailed it the way that Enter the Matrix did. I mean, there were some levels that you absolutely had to be a fucking gymnast just to get through. Like, you had to flip off walls and flip down hallways and all this kind of shit, and yeah, it was...
Yeah, I don't think another game has done acrobatics quite like The Matrix.
Ed, before you get started, I just want a couple of points. It was listed by GameSpot in their 5 most disappointing titles of the year and appeared in several dubious honours lists.
My views do not represent those of the company.
No, I understand that. I'm just making sure we understand the type of game we're talking about here. EGM referred to it as, in more than 20 years of playing games, I've never seen a console game as obviously unfinished and rushed to market as Enter the Matrix. This game is a complete mess, and that's the only complete thing about it.
That is way too mean.
That's unfair. I actually think the production values of the Enter the Matrix are really good. Like you said, written by the Wachowskis, actually voice acted by Jada Pinkett Smith and Anthony Wong, I think it is, who is another Asian character in the video game. So, mad props. Need more representation. And not to mention acrobatics plus the martial arts, also very good. It made me feel like a total badass and without any effort, really.
All right.
Yep.
All right. Someone actually believes that. We're going to jump up 2 years. 2005, a title that was available for Windows, PlayStation 2, and Xbox. Playboy the Mansion. Who would like to begin?
Ed's still Googling the game.
Do you like The Sims? Do you like ladies?
Sure.
This is literally
You
the
will
pitch.
love Playboy the Mansion. A stellar sim-like game.
Where you play as Neo, I believe.
Is that all you've got in your notes? Growing up in Wellington for me. No, I played I actually got Playboy the Mansion. I only just moved out of home, and I was allowed to. I could, play an adult game. I was fucking pumped, and yeah, it was about those lovely large breasticles, and
It's being live streamed, you realize?
and so I can manage.
Joby, what you don't realise is that this masterpiece was not just about what he said. It's actually about the articles. And as someone who would go on to work at Penthouse, yes, a competitor, it was my first insight to the realities that the world of working at an adult magazine is not like what you imagine, right? Whenever I told someone I worked at Penthouse, they would say, oh my God, you go to work and there's just naked people and sex everywhere. I'm like, it's just an office. Like, yeah, there's some boobs on the wall, but it's mainly just an office, and that was this game.
But you were playing actually inside the Playboy Mansion. It wasn't just an office.
It was an idealized version of my life to come. Yes, thank you. You said it so much better than I could.
I think the interesting...
Lucy, sorry, just before you get in here, because I do need to point out a couple of things that were said about this game, including a review from, of all things, the Sydney Morning Herald, who called it a frisky concept with limited thrills, which is just cruel, really. And Detroit Free Press. I flipped on the game expecting a world of champagne, roses, and frequent wisps of steam. Instead, I got an immediate request that I construct an office on the mansion's upper floor. Please continue.
Well, I was extremely pleasantly surprised by Playboy the Mansion. I was never a huge fan of The Sims because there was too much micromanagement involved, and I've got quite a limited attention span. But Playboy the Mansion came along. I saw it was written by Brenda Romero. Now, who knows who Brenda Romero is? Hands up. She's a legendary game designer, so a lot of people don't know this fact. And I'm here to argue that Playboy the Mansion is actually quite a feminist game. You know, not only are you,
Breasticles.
I said,
Don't say that anymore.
for starters, yes, it is about celebrating women's bodies, yes. But, you know, it's also about producing a magazine that celebrates women and celebrates women's bodies. And, you know, me being a female playing it, it was also, like, one of the only games I could really play with a lot of my female friends. Not to encourage the stigma of women not playing video games, but just because this was such a sort of a thrill for a lot of women who didn't play video games to sort of like sit down and produce a magazine and take these ridiculous photos. I remember my friends and I would get into arguments about like how they should be posed and that sort of thing. And I was up all night playing this game because it wasn't just about the women. It was about actually being on top of your empire and like basically making this incredible piece of art with contributions from such stellar celebrities like Carmen Electra and Snoop Dogg. And you know, so much of it was just like, I mean, yeah, I'll admit, the feminist thing is bullshit. It was trashy fun, but like it really was trashy fun. And the fact that you were sort of, it was sexy, and you could like go to bed with all these women, and you could also build up your mansion and like swim around in the grotto and be Hugh Hefner. I mean, that's not really an experience that many people would deny. And for me, I was put into the shoes of Hugh Hefner playing that game. I really was. You know, when he died just several weeks ago, I brought out my old battered copy of Playboy the Mansion that I had rented and subsequently bought from United Video and put it in my old original Xbox and gave it a spin. R.I.P. Hef.
All right.
I also want to say that for a genre that is so niche, simulation and strategy, like Playboy, I guess did a lot to bring players who normally wouldn't play those kinds of games into it and enjoy it. And I actually have a colleague who told me this story. I won't name who it is, but he apparently traded in a copy, the cardboard collector's copy of Shadow of the Colossus for Playboy the Mansion, and he tells me he doesn't regret it at all.
Yeah, rightly so. Rightly so. Like, why would you? I mean, Shadow of the Colossus is nothing compared to Playboy the Mansion. It's trash.
All right, let's take a look at the final game on the list. We are continuing through the years, this time to 2011, a game made by Splash Damage for Bethesda, Windows, PlayStation 3, and the 360. It is Brink.
Oh,
We
wow.
warned you. You knew what you were getting into.
That one resonated. Okay.
Brink is so good. It's come back. It's relevant again. It's now free to play. They're giving it another marketing boost because it's a great game. It's outpacing Lawbreakers in terms of player base.
True, all the best games become free later on because they're doing so well.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you know, Brink was one of the first games that really kind of combined single player and multiplayer in a pretty seamless way. And now, you know, we take it for granted with games like Destiny and what have you. But Brink was, you know, back in 2013, it was one of the first games that I'd ever played that did that effectively. And although its single player campaign was not anything really to write home about, its multiplayer campaign was genuinely thrilling. I mean, I remember I had my heart in my throat, and I wasn't necessarily like a huge fan of modern multiplayer shooters. Like, I'm more of a, you know, Quake Wars kind of Counter-Strike kind of girl. So don't look at me like that, Joe. So, you know, for me, these multiplayer experiences were just incredibly thrilling. I mean, the physics system was amazing. The sliding around was amazing. And just, you know, also the way that these levels were designed, these sort of labyrinthian corridors, complex kind of web of mazes, you know. And it made me feel like I was playing an old school multiplayer game. Like, and I loved it. And I was so unfairly treated by the press.
It was, a little bit. Would you like a quote?
I would like a quote. Thank you, Nick Healy.
Well, so here we are. Brink is unfinished, and that doesn't mean it's full of technical problems. Well, it is. It's got those as well. But mostly it's just unpolished and poorly executed and a mess.
Well, I mean, I would say, you know, it was the first modern multiplayer game that really resonated with me. I love the 8 vs 8. I love everything about it. Yeah, go Brink.
I think what people don't realize is that Brink is actually short for Brink of Perfection. It's only held back by some very minor technical flaws at launch that, were patched out. The modern multiplayer shooter has patches. It's not an issue. But I do want to sell out one of the panelists here. Job, I heard that you did review this game, and I actually heard that you talked another editor out of giving it a lower score and into a higher score because you love this game so much.
Yeah, that's totally true, Nathan. I'm surprised you would bring this up, seeing how that obviously tanks any chance you have of. I don't know.
These are mind games. That was weird. That was like
That
a
was
weird
weird,
mind
yeah.
game thing.
It's got to be.
It threw me. No, Brink's actually properly amazing. It's like genuinely amazing. The movement system, I like movement systems back from Enter the Matrix. But I like movement systems. Brink had like a stellar movement system, and it had this like map design that was like created so that you actually felt like the movement system like empowered you to do the best to help your team out and to actually get the win. If you were one of the light classes, you could get to places that the other people couldn't, and so you could surround them and fuck them up, and
It
suddenly
was just nail biting, right? Like genuinely nail biting stuff. Nail biting.
nail biting.
Yeah, two words, parkour. Brink was really like Assassin's Creed did parkour, obviously, but Brink was a turning point that made modern first-person shooter games feel good. It was good to run around, jump, like mantle, slide under a thing, and headshot a dude. And like Titanfall has taken that to great lengths, obviously, but Brink is where it all started, and it should be lauded for that. And like people talk about its technical limitations, but its art style was brilliant at the time too. The character designs, and people should give kudos to that team making such a beautiful world. And
Yeah, its design was amazing. I mean, it trod that line really well between sort of cartoonish and photorealistic
exactly.
and
yeah, it was like Borderlands, but a little bit
slightly
more adult.
exaggerated.
Yeah.
And I'd like to point out that it took place in the middle of an ocean, and I like games on boats because of Resident Evil, so.
Yeah, I mean, I still play Brink to this day. I don't know about you guys. I mean, I certainly do.
Why would you ever uninstall it?
Well,
any of these
exactly.
games, for that matter.
There's a whole new crowd coming in now with the free-to-play model. So
Yeah, all the people leaving Lawbreakers, all 12 of them.
yeah.
Ooh. All right, we have wrapped the 4 games. They've defended the indefensible. Let's see if we can make this work. I'm going to talk about Resident Evil Dead Aim first. Give me a round of applause when I say the name of the person you think actually enjoyed the game, as opposed to 3 people who were faking it. Do we think Nathan enjoyed Resident Evil Dead Aim?
Thanks, those 3 people.
How about Lucy? What about Job? And Mr. Tran, Ed. I'm sensing that we think Job actually enjoyed the game most of all, but it was Ed's pick.
I love that game.
You're a lunatic.
It's a great game. Gun in one hand,
and the
control
2
the
other people
move.
who
I have
played it.
honestly
Okay.
never played that game. I don't even think like
Can we
I've
get
even
hands up
seen
again
the
of people
cover.
who have again? Just this guy.
It's a great game.
I don't even think I've seen it in the real world.
See, your story about the renting thing, that's what I actually did. I rented it multiple times, and I ended up buying it.
Didn't you have to pay more to rent a fucking light gun?
Yeah. No, well, I owned the light gun already,
Oh,
and I was
of
like, I
course.
need games for
For
this
that
shit.
one game. Yeah, right.
Alrighty. Enter the Matrix. Do we believe Nathan picked it? Lucy?
What gave it away?
Mr. Gilroy, Job? Or Ed?
They know.
That was Job's pick. He genuinely enjoys Enter the Matrix.
It was good.
Did I steal like all of your arguments for the positive thing immediately?
You probably boned me. It was, yeah, I'm like, oh yeah, I like what he said.
Why do you like that game? I mean,
What's not to like?
Well, I mean, it
shooting
was
sucks
novelty.
balls.
It was
Oh my
novelty
God.
for about 10 minutes.
If you actually, got good, you like had a lot of fun with the shooting.
All right, Playboy the Mansion. Nathan? Lucy? Job?
No, Nick, they know it.
It was Lucy's pick, genuinely. And finally, Brink. We know now.
Why do you people hate it?
All right. We might get some
You've got
people...
such a Brink hater in the audience. I love it.
I got to say, I barely remember it, and I was at E3 the year it came out. It just made no impact whatsoever. If you would like us to defend games that you feel guilty about enjoying, start queuing up near a microphone. I'm going to kick it off. I unironically love Alpha Protocol. Why am I right?
Oh, dude, Alpha Protocol was sick.
It's
Thank
actually
you.
properly good.
That morality
I am
system?
not lying here.
The fact that you can, you're an international spy, right? And the things you do in one location, they don't affect what happens in the other places because they don't know you did that shit. So you could be like a huge bastard in one area, really good in another. I thought it was really smart design.
And you had to make choices that actually impacted the game the further you went in. Like, the impact was phenomenal. I mean, it was janky as balls, but it's criminal that it never got a sequel.
Alpha Protocol is the greatest RTS/FPS RPG.
What?
I would say that Alpha Protocol is the best game that starts with A.
Yeah, cool.
A+, basically.
Yeah.
I'm feeling good about all of those. All right, so if we can get some questions, hit me over here.
Hey, how you going? Nick, big fan of you on Download This Show. It's always good to hear your voice on there. The game that I want you guys to defend is True Crime Streets of LA.
Holy shit.
Because
This
fuck,
is the one
that
with
game has
Snoop Dogg,
aged
right?
poorly. It's not aged well.
No, it's not the one. All right, cool.
Is that the one with the Asian protagonist?
Do I need to Google
Yeah.
this really quickly?
There you go.
Most of them not played by Asians, though.
And Christopher Walken at the end, right?
Yeah, he plays a
Like your
he's
dad
like
or
a
some shit.
guide. He's just like, make sure you're walking down the street properly or something. It's just
No, do that impression again.
no.
Yeah, the thing I like about the True Crime series is like it's an open world game with like a good melee combat system, which I always enjoy.
And like, I don't know, you felt like a gangster. It felt like, a decent alternative to Grand Theft Auto for a bit. I mean, Sleeping Dogs came out and it was almost what I wanted from a true crime game, but not quite. I wanted that true crime essence.
Yeah, I mean, I just sort of felt like it really captured like the grittiness of LA. I mean, I just think it did a brilliant job at really,
The streets.
like the streets and the smell and just the atmosphere.
Have you played it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think True Crime was so good that I've actually literally forgotten what GTA stands for. That's it. That's the only pitch that I have.
All right, I'm going to bring up something slightly more recent. Mass Effect Andromeda.
Mass Effect Andromeda was my first Mass Effect game, and what an introduction.
What?
I've got to say, like, for years, people have been like, I've got some blind spots, having not played the Mass Effect trilogy. Apparently, as someone who loves storytelling, I mean, I do. I'm not saying that I apparently don't. But, I should have played these games. So I was psyched to play Andromeda, and my God, did it deliver on the storytelling, the facial animations, top notch.
Yeah, I mean, I do think Andromeda, in all seriousness, was a little bit unfairly maligned. I think that it did a really great job at sort of telling a story with really high stakes. I'm going to be completely honest here, I also really loved how they just doubled down on the sex, which was a big part of the reason why I loved the original trilogy.
Yep. Yeah, I liked, it was the Bone Zone. Welcome to the Bone Zone. And Mass Effect Andromeda allowed you to go there as often as you wanted, which, thumbs up.
Yeah. For as much flack as Mass Effect Andromeda gets, it did one thing really well, and that was the combat. Yeah, like the combat still felt really good, jetting around and using cover and being more mobile. And, it helped with the best part of Mass Effect, which is the multiplayer component. And so it made multiplayer feel really freaking good.
Yeah. Not at all tacked on horde mode, integral part of the game.
Integral.
One of the games that I spent a lot of time playing, my friends told me I shouldn't play it. It's terrible. It's got no storyline, terrible graphics. But I spent so much time playing Minesweeper. Come on.
Well, I'm gonna say, you know, when I was a teenager, like, I would go down to United Video and rent Minesweeper.
I'm gonna red flag that. That's a reference to the game. Thank you. Yeah, no, everyone loves Mine. What's not to love about Minesweeper? It's got maths.
Probability. No, a true story here. Like, my brother's a huge nerd. He's way older than me. And when everyone was playing solitaire on PC, he taught me how to play Minesweeper. And once I learned to really appreciate how to play Minesweeper, it was amazing. It was like the old school Sudoku. It made parts of my brain that I don't usually work, and it felt good.
I actually got banned from playing games for a year or installing games on computers because I accidentally put a virus on the cult computer. That's right, cult, not church. So I only had Minesweeper and Ski Free. And my God, can someone bring up Ski Free so I can talk about that? But I think what people don't realize about Minesweeper in terms of the storytelling, to your point, sir, this was the beginning of emergent narrative. Like, explosive storytelling.
Has there been a Minesweeper movie? I feel like this.
Don't say that out loud. Michael Bay is listening.
Please.
Yeah, mine's I'm fairly sure it's an Xbox 360 release game. It's Perfect Dark Zero. Incorporated the clunkiness of every gun, the inability to use a sniper rifle and fire quickly because your bullets would disappear in midair after random distances. So you always have to shoot a couple of times.
Well, I think that game should be celebrated for pioneering on new tech, you know, a new era of strong female protagonists. I think that Kate from Perfect Dark Zero was, you know, just truly, she wasn't answering to a man. This had nothing to do with the male gaze. This was all about her being a powerful, strong female, weapon-wielding, kick-assing character, and to be honest, she really inspired me. In fact, Perfect Dark Zero was the reason I became a games journalist.
I think so. Joanna Dark.
Kate to her friend. Yeah.
Sure. Is still one of the most endearing spy characters in video games. Like, she reminds me of Kate Archer from No One Lives Forever, another great series. But we need just more like cool British spy women. We've got to bring that back.
Yeah, and I think you'll find that it wasn't a random distance that the sniper rifle bullet stopped. It was fixed, so it was on purpose. So.
It's called bullet drop.
Yeah, it's called, yeah, and we'll just return to, perhaps if you were to get good.
Actually, Job, if you'd played the game, you would know that that was actually a revolutionary mechanic where the bullets disappear into a black hole and there's a random enemy somewhere else on another mission that dies. Headshot. Genius.
I should point out GameSpot gave it 9 out of 10.
That's right. That was me.
What? Was it?
No.
Oh my God.
My game happens to be one I think was made by Bethesda Works, Wet.
Well, I mean, the name alone was such a winner.
It has a strong
really
female
cheesy,
protagonist.
Really, yeah, it has a strong female protagonist, ironically enough, and it's also got this really cheesy 80s movie storyline to it.
Was that the one?
And it has this mad, like,
Yeah.
concession, like, go to concession stand video in between, like, chapters and stuff.
I think Wet is a great example of just like a sort of a cult classic. I think for a lot of us who grew up with Buffy the Vampire Slayer, you know, Eliza Dushku as Faith was such a big draw card. And of course, you know, Buffy the Vampire Slayer is considered a cult classic as well. And I really think that transferred over to Wet. Because in Wet, Eliza Dushku plays, you know, this sort of very sort of damaged character, but she's so real and raw. And, you know, because the game is called Wet,
Wet.
you know, it's really
Wet.
Wet.
Fun fact, the working title was Moist.
And as the main character, Mrs. Wet, I guess.
Ms. Wet, please. Sorry.
Oh man, that game was a travesty.
Swords and guns. What more could you want?
Yeah, I'll take that point.
Gameplay.
Yeah, I'll say that the only reason I really remember it is because it had the best T-shirts at E3 this year. I think I've still got one. It was good. That year, not this year. Anyway, please.
Hey, mine's a little bit more niche, but mine's
We're willing to lie. It's fine. Yep.
right. It's called Galgun Double Peas.
Oh, Galgun.
Yeah,
Who doesn't
greatest game
love
ever made.
shooting things at women's private parts? Japanese are brilliant game designers. Resident Evil Dead Aim, Galgun.
Seminal.
Seminal.
What's it called? Galgun.
What is it called?
Galgun.
It's called Galgun. The Steam release has the subtitle Double Peas.
Oh, well,
You also, some people couldn't actually get to the second level because there was a bug that crashed the game before you could.
Does anyone actually want to have a take at that, or do we do another one?
You know, what I think is really good about it is that it doesn't waste your time. You know, you get to the second level, or you don't rather, but that's it. You're done. You know, and
the fastest kill screen in a game.
Yeah.
that's right. And you know, hey.
We
That's-
don't. I mean,
that money's gone.
we're adults. Like, we don't have that much time on our hands, and Galgun just knows that, you know. And
To have the
delivers.
choice to finish a game taken away from you, I
yeah,
think
it's
it's really
great.
bold.
It's really, really bold choice. Really bold choice.
I'm going to jump in with a personal one here. Kane and Lynch 2.
One of the greatest third-person co-op shooters ever made. You
very
know.
much.
Any co-op shooter is my jam. Even the terrible ones, which obviously Kane and Lynch is not. But the first game probably didn't deserve a sequel.
That kid started crying because of Kane and Lynch.
You're meant to be making me feel good about the game. Thank you.
But boy, am I glad that it got a sequel because they knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, I really think they did. The conceit was amazing. The whole conceit is like you actually watching the third-person action through a cameraman, like
Yeah.
a third cameraman. So there are all these sort of like cool video artifacts. When you headshot it, it was like a blurry, pixelated effect. And the way the game ends is like pretty damn interesting.
I just like the fact that it explores male friendship.
It does.
You know, and that's quite rare for video games. And I think that Kane and Lynch is a series that like dared to go there, and did so with such finesse.
It was very fresh.
It was.
I do appreciate that the characters were just two slobs. They're just
Oh.
despicable characters.
And the multiplayer allowed you to like screw over your friends. You'd do this bank heist, and then you could shoot them in the back while they were trying to leave, and you could steal all the money yourself, which is my favorite concept in any video game ever. If I could shoot my friends to find out who got the real chicken dinner in PUBG, I would do it every single time, and I'd do it well before they could fucking tell.
Well, you would never make it that far, Joe. So.
What do we got over here?
Hi guys. I got a little slightly different spin. So I remember really enjoying Mario Sunshine back in the day, but recently I feel like there's been a bit of a, negative backlash to it. So I wanted to test the room. Is Mario Sunshine good?
Mario Sunshine is very, very good.
Yep.
Flub.
Yeah, huge response.
Shooting that water. The thing I like most about Mario Sunshine is actually the challenge levels. Like that actually strip away all the sort of the theme of it and just have hardcore platforming. And Mario is actually a really, really good hardcore platformer, and so I enjoyed that aspect of it. So yeah, it's a great game.
You got your hose, you get to wield a hose. I know it's not something that they really explore much in video games, Lucy, but a man wielding his hose however the fuck he likes is it's pretty fresh.
I got nothing.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave it there too.
Okay. It is apparently still a 9 out of 10 game. Everyone seemed to have absolutely loved it. What do we got over here?
Hi, I just thought I'd just take it back a bit to like the PlayStation 1 days, like back in 1998 specifically, and it is a licensed game, The Fifth Element for PS1.
Well, I don't know if
Yeah.
you were listening earlier, but I said that movie tie-ins are basically the greatest thing in gaming. So
I know, right?
obviously, The Fifth Element, one of the greatest sci-fi movies ever made by one of today's greatest living directors.
Well, I mean, I think it really did, just to take your lead there, Nate, I think it really did, translate Luc Besson's vision so strongly into a sort of interactive space. And, that's a really difficult thing to do because Besson is such a visionary director. How do you take something that is so aesthetically rich as The Fifth Element and then put it over to the PlayStation 1 era graphics? I mean, how do you do that? That's my question.
To be able to be bold enough to attempt it is just, it's fantastic. You can't really get any better than that. I love how it had all of the 5 elements.
What are they, Joe?
Oh, there's water, and there's fire, and wind, and...
Heart.
Ed?
Any game with more shrieking Chris Tucker has my seal of approval.
Cool. GameSpot gave it 2.4 and called it quite possibly the worst game they've ever played.
Oh, hey guys, it's kind of a licensed game. I think Star Wars Battlefront, but Lord of the Rings Conquest. What do you guys think of it?
What did you say? Wolverine's
No.
Conquest?
Lord of the Rings.
Oh,
Lord of the Rings Conquest. Massive Tolkien fan. They had none of the voice actors for it. Yeah, go.
This is really bad because I genuinely love that game, and everyone's going to think I'm lying. But that was the one with the giant eagle and stuff, right? The recent one.
No, this is the one it was literally Star Wars Battlefront, but made by Pandemic.
Oh,
but
right.
it's Lord of the Rings
My
Conquest.
favorite game. As a Battlefield guy, I have long been waiting for knockoff games that are better than the original, and obviously Lord of the Rings was going to do that. I mean, who needs machine guns when you can have magic and swords and bows, right?
Hobbits.
Hobbits, yeah,
hobbits.
different statures and change the hitboxes, that alone is
Well,
revolutionary.
talking about not having the licensed voice actors, sometimes they can add a real charm to the game because I find sometimes it can be a bit jarring, a bit uncanny valley if I hear, Patrick Stewart suddenly talk to me, or I don't want the original voice. I want someone who does a slightly weaker imitation.
They were really bad imitations.
Yeah, in order to sort of avoid that kind of uncanny valley thing, and Lord of the Rings Wolverine did that great.
As a New Zealander, aren't you duty bound to love this shit anyway? Because you guys love all Lord of the Rings.
That's
shit.
why I moved over to Australia.
To get away from it. You were booted out. Like Nathan was saying, the idea of taking the Battlefront formula and transferring it across to the, medieval fantasy of Lord of the Rings, genius. It's I don't know, they didn't spend enough time really letting you wield the ring.
Yeah. Lord of the Rings is such a great concept that it can transfer to so many different genres, first-person shooters, MOBAs, obviously.
That one went well.
Yeah, that one went really well.
nailed.
But the thing I like most about
RTS.
Lord of the Rings Conquest, is all the Asian characters in it, obviously. So I really, has a special place in my heart.
I just also suddenly realised Patrick Stewart was not in Lord of the Rings.
Games Radar gave it 2 out of 10 and said that the Ent models looked like claymation diarrhea.
Okay, so when I was growing up, browser games were a really big thing, and one I still play to this day is Neopets.
Oh, Neopets. Well, that was a phenomenon, we could say that we could call it a bad game, sure, but it's look at what it's done. Look at how it's revolutionized the pet simulation.
That's all in the title, isn't it? Neo and pets, new pets.
New pets.
New way to look at pets through your browser.
A new way to look at pets. And ever since then, things have never been the same.
And Neo, as we all know, Neo is the main character of Andromeda, which is a great crossover as well. And playing games in browsers, what's not to like about that? You could do it while you're at work and pretend you were working or at school or whatever the fuck. And you get your pet and you do pet things with it. You're not doing pet things.
Oh,
Pet's
wow.
doing pet things.
Well, Neopets was such an integral part of so many different teenage childhoods that you can't discount that. Like,
Teenage childhoods, or
yeah,
I've been playing it since I was like 8, so you
all
know.
of them. Yeah, like it brings a lot of people together, and you can't discount the power of nostalgia to elevate something to godlike status.
yeah, it's kind of like MSN. You know, we all loved it and all had it, and it was a movement.
Yeah.
And as was Neopets. I still have my Neopet. His name is Wally. Is that correct? Like,
Not really.
We'll get one last one.
Name?
Well, I didn't know how bad this game was because I was really young, but I played Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, and I really enjoyed that game when I was a kid, until the internet told me I was wrong.
The problem with Nuts and Bolts is everyone was expecting another Banjo platformer, but Nuts and Bolts did some really cool things. It was Minecraft before Minecraft, right?
Yeah, nuts and bolts. You had it all. No, he's right though. Everyone was expecting this great platformer, and then they got that instead, and they were bummed out.
I think
You were wrong.
with a lot of these games. I think that with a lot of these games that we were talking about, some of them have genuinely tried to do some pretty cool things. Like Brink was one of them. Brink sucked.
No, it didn't.
It was one of them. And the same with Nuts and Bolts. Like, kudos to that game for trying something new.
Yeah, but finding that one thing in a game that you really enjoy and really get a lot out of doesn't make it a bad game. Like, if it's good to you, if you enjoy it, then more power to you.
I think, if we've learned anything from Hollywood, that, you should franchise everything. And so I think games need to be pushing more into different genres that don't even necessarily make sense. Right?
Cool. Yeah. All right, let's wrap it there. Can I get a big round of applause, please, for Nathan, Luce, Rod, and Ed? Thank you all so much for coming along. Please enjoy the rest of the show, and